I want you to imagine something for a second. Think about what is actually happening inside your head, like right now.
Ooh, that's a dangerous question.
Right. But I don't mean the polished, presentable thoughts you share in a morning stand-up meeting or, over dinner. I mean the raw, unfiltered feed.
Like the half-finished sentences.
Exactly. The half-finished sentences overlapping with, say, a phantom phone vibration in your pocket, or a random lyric from a song you haven't heard in 10 years that's just looping relentlessly.
Yeah, layered over a sudden visceral spike of anxiety about an email you forgot to send.
All of it happening while the ambient hum of the refrigerator in the room you're sitting in is just droning on. Now, what if someone handed you a cable, told you to plug it directly into your cerebral cortex, and just hit record on that exact chaotic frequency?
I mean, it sounds terrifying.
It really does. But what does it actually sound like inside someone else's unfiltered mind? Because that's what we are getting into today. We have two deeply unconventional documents on the table that attempt to answer that exact question.
Yes, we are exploring a project called ADHD on Tape. It's by an artist known as JJ, or the creator.
And right off the bat, we should clarify.
Yeah, we need to clarify immediately that this is not an album in any traditional sense.
Not at all.
You aren't going to hear a collection of pop songs or even standard instrumental tracks. The artist describes it as a direct translation of a nervous system recorded to magnetic tape.
Which is just a wild concept.
Yeah.
And to decode how that is even physically possible, we're looking at two primary sources for this deep dive. First, a highly passionate philosophical liner note authored by JJ.
And the second is an incredibly granular text-to-music prompt, which actually served as the foundational blueprint for the audio itself.
So the mission for our deep dive today is to explore how an artist actually translates the hyper-associative reality of ADHD into a raw audio stream of consciousness.
Right.
We really want to know what happens when we stop fighting our own cognitive currents. Because JJ's fundamental argument in these liner notes is a radical reframing of the mind itself.
Completely radical. They entirely reject the medicalized vocabulary we normally use.
Yeah, I noticed that. In the source text, there is zero mention of ADHD as a deficit or a disability or like a malfunction.
None. JJ treats those societal labels as a fundamental misunderstanding of the brain. They frame it instead as the unfiltered flow of the muse.
The muse.
Yeah. The idea JJ puts forward is that the universe actually uses the human nervous system as a direct, unshielded vessel. The liner notes rely heavily on this Taoist metaphor.
Right. The river?
Exactly. The concept of surrendering to the Taoist river, because modern society demands what JJ calls assembly line focus.
Which is such a great phrase.
It is. We are conditioned to fight the current of our own thoughts, right? To force our brains into a straight, predictable line just to prove we are productive and in control.
But JJ argues against that.
Completely. JJ argues that true communion with the cosmos only happens when you drop the ego entirely, stop swimming against the current, and just let the disorder breathe.
Okay, let's unpack this for a second. Because calling for the end of assembly line focus is a massive paradigm shift.
Oh, for sure.
If I think about how most of us operate, it's like we are desperately trying to stay in our lane on a paved, predictable highway. We want speed limits, we want road signs, we want to know our exact destination.
And JJ's basically saying, take your hands off the wheel.
Right. JJ is essentially suggesting you take your hands completely off the steering wheel, close your eyes, and let the car veer off into the wilderness at top speed.
Yeah.
I'm struggling to see how that isn't just a terrifying proposition for most people. I mean, it sounds like psychological freefall.
Well, if we connect this to the bigger picture, it is a free fall. You are describing a localized form of ego death.
Ego death. Wow.
Yeah, JJ explicitly states in the notes that when the surrender is achieved, it isn't JJ creating the work anymore. The creator becomes a passive vessel.
Just a conduit.
Exactly. The art moves through them with what the text calls the hyper-associative logic of a dream. But think about the psychological leap required for an artist to do that.
Massive.
You have to transition from being the architect, the person who commands the structure and builds the house, to being a mere witness watching a storm roll through the property.
But wait, if JJ is completely surrendering the ego to become this passive witness, how on earth do you physically engineer a soundscape?
That's the million-dollar question.
Right. When you've just thrown out the entire concept of control, you can't exactly sit down and write a catchy chorus if you were just observing a storm.
No, you can't. You have to dismantle the traditional architecture of music completely. Which brings us to the second document, the text-to-music prompt.
Okay, yeah.
The very first instruction JJ establishes is a total rejection of conventional structure. The prompt literally dictates no songs, no movements, no beginning, middle, or end.
Just states.
Right. The listener is presented purely with states, biological tempos that mimic the nervous system.
Yeah, the text mentions the audio should race when it mimics being overstimulated. Then it'll just freeze unexpectedly.
Or drag under emotional weight.
Exactly. And then snap into violent hyperfocus. And to achieve those biological states, the work relies heavily on atonality.
But the prompt makes a crucial distinction there that I found so fascinating.
Yeah, JJ explicitly says this shouldn't be the rigid, academic atonality of someone like Arnold Schoenberg.
Because Schoenberg's 12-tone technique, while atonal, is still deeply rigid. I mean, he essentially replaced the traditional rules of harmony with a complex mathematical grid.
It's highly intellectual.
Very.
So Schoenberg just built a different kind of cage.
Exactly. A different cage.
And JJ doesn't want a grid. The prompt calls for an anti-architectural sound. They want it to represent consciousness before language even has a chance to organize it into thoughts.
Then the physical mechanism they use to force that feeling on the listener is microtones.
Right. Let's get into that.
Yeah, let's look at why that works neurologically. So in Western music, we use equal temperament. Think of the standard keys on a piano. Those 12 evenly spaced notes imply agreement, stability, and mathematical predictability. Our brains love clean frequency ratios.
Because it feels safe.
Exactly. When we hear a perfect fifth or an octave, our auditory cortex feels a sense of physical resolution. But by demanding microtones, which are the infinite spaces between the piano keys, JJ is physically denying the listener's brain that mathematical resolution.
And the prompt describes that specific acoustic unease as emotional ambiguity.
Right.
It's meant to sound like, quote, hearing memory decay in real time.
Which is such a haunting phrase.
It literally destabilizes your ear.
It does, and that destabilization extends to the visceral production aesthetic, too. The sonic environment is hostile. You hear degraded tape, false starts intentionally left in the mix, audio that clips and distorts into the red.
Just chaos.
Yeah, JJ populates the field with room tone, musicians arguing quietly in the background, field recordings with absolutely no context.
And the refrigerator.
Oh yeah, a refrigerator operating as a droning bass line.
See, I have to admit, I got stuck on this part of the source material.
Really? Why?
Well, the prompt demands that silence be used aggressively, rather than just as a pause. It mentions someone tapping a radiator in irrational rhythms, or a bowed cymbal that comes in way too loud and then vanishes for 7 minutes.
Right.
Here's where it gets really interesting, because I have to push back on the concept here.
Okay, let's hear it.
If you strip away the tempo, remove the harmonic resolution, and just give me clipping tape and a radiator tap, how is that not just the sound of a broken construction site?
That's a fair question.
Why am I wearing headphones to listen to this?
Yeah.
How does a human brain process this as music?
Well, that reaction is exactly what JJ is playing with, and it gets to the core mechanism of ADHD perception. The liner notes argue that this cognitive state is not random, it is hyper-associative.
Hyper-associative, okay.
So if a casual listener drops into minute 12 of the track, yeah, they might just hear a broken construction site. But if you listen to the whole piece, the underlying structure relies on invisible connective threads.
Invisible connective threads. What do you mean by that?
Well, a sound doesn't just happen and disappear. You might hear the timbral echo of that radiator tap 30 minutes later, but now it's been pitch shifted.
Oh, I see.
An interrupted musical idea returns, but it's mutated. The ambient noise like the child humming off mic or that refrigerator drone bleeds across the tracks the exact same way an intrusive thought loops in a human mind.
So it's not random noise.
No, the piece operates entirely on audio stream of consciousness. The brain of the listener has to actively weave those associative pathways together.
Which introduces a massive risk, right? I mean, JJ explicitly acknowledges in the text that pure randomness is dangerous.
Yeah, absolutely.
If you just blast the human brain with unyielding chaos for an hour, it goes emotionally flat. We tune it out. We are hardwired to seek patterns to survive.
And what's fascinating here is that biological need for patterns is exactly how JJ builds the narrative arc of the album.
Because there has to be an arc.
Right. How do you create an emotional journey when you've forbidden traditional song structures? You tease the brain.
You tease it.
The prompt dictates that the audio must nearly deny pattern entirely, but occasionally allow the listener to glimpse one. The imagery used in the text is brilliant. It's described as like seeing a face in static.
That is so evocative. Like seeing a face in static. Instead of the old cliche of being lost in a dark forest and spotting a cabin, I kept thinking about those old Magic Eye optical illusion posters from the 90s.
Oh, yeah, the stereograms.
Exactly. You're staring at this wall of neon static. Your brain is straining, trying to force order onto the chaos. It's frustrating. It's exhausting.
Very exhausting.
And then, for a split second, the geometry locks in. The 3D image snaps into perfect focus, and you can't unsee it. JJ is using that exact cognitive mechanism of tension and release.
And they push that tension to an absolute extreme to build the climax of the project. The notes describe a sequence of 43 straight minutes of relentless dissonance.
43 minutes. I mean, that is the length of a standard commute or a long meeting.
Exactly. For 43 minutes, your auditory cortex is literally starved for resolution. It is fighting to find that face in the static. And then finally,
The release.
one single beautiful consonant interval appears. A human voice finally sings a sustained note, perfectly in tune.
Wait, and here's what blew my mind. Because the emotional result of that perfectly in-tune note isn't joy.
No.
The prompt explicitly states that when that harmony finally hits, the entire preceding chaos feels retroactively lonely.
Retroactively lonely. Think about that.
The realization of harmony makes you understand the profound weight of the dissonance you just survived. Does that moment of relief actually make you realize how profoundly isolated you just were?
Yes. Think about how that mirrors modern society's overstimulation. We are so bombarded by information, notifications, and demands on our attention that we acclimate to the noise.
You just get used to it.
We don't even realize how tense our nervous systems are. So when the noise finally stops, the silence is almost deafening. The relief highlights the trauma.
That is heavy.
The arc of the album isn't a story of beginning, middle, and end. It's the journey from disorientation to an almost tender vulnerability. It is the literal sound of someone who has finally stopped fighting themselves.
And to ground that feeling, JJ surrounds the audio with a very specific visual mythology.
Right, the packaging.
The source material outlines the aesthetic. It's mislabeled cassettes, crossed out handwritten timings on a notepad. There's no clean digital typography.
It specifically mentions recordings made at 3:12 a.m. with waveform asymmetry.
Yeah, this mythology reinforces the album's identity not as a polished commercial product, but as an accidental autobiography.
A forensic document composed by insomnia. It's the remnants of a mind awake when the rest of the world is asleep.
But I want to pivot here, because to me, the most mind-bending aspect of this deep dive isn't just the philosophy or the audio itself.
Oh, you mean how they made it?
Yes. It's the actual technology used to orchestrate it. Everything we've just discussed, the 43 minutes of dissonance, the biological tempo, the radiator tapping, these aren't notes on sheet music played by a band in a studio.
No, they aren't. And this is the grand reveal of how this project physically came into existence.
That's wild.
This deeply emotional, highly philosophical instruction manual we've been analyzing is literally a text-to-music prompt.
So it's AI.
Yes. JJ utilized a massive eclectic tech stack to realize this. They used Claude and ChatGPT for prompt ideation, perchance.org, to randomize the variables, and then fed those parameters into Google Flow Music and Meta AI to render the raw audio.
So they are using large language models to orchestrate an audio representation of pre-language cognition.
The irony there is incredible.
It really is. And then they took all those fragmented AI outputs and manually assembled them using an alpha build of Audacity 4 on a Linux Ubuntu operating system.
It completely reframes what it means to compose. JJ is acting as a curator of states, composing with AI as a collaborative partner.
They didn't sit down and physically bow, assemble, or tune a piano improperly.
No, they wrote the precise emotional and biological parameters that generated it.
So what does this all mean? If you are sitting at a keyboard generating a symphony of chaos through 5 different neural networks, what is your actual role?
That's the core debate right now.
I mean, are you the musician?
Yeah.
The conductor? The instrument?
Yeah.
Or are you just the first audience member to hear what the system spits out?
This raises an important question about the evolution of authorship, but there is a strong historical precedent here. Think about aleatory art.
Aleatory art?
Yeah, the tradition of composers like John Cage in the mid-20th century. Cage would throw dice or consult the I Ching to introduce chance operations into his compositions.
Right, I've heard of that.
He wanted to remove his own ego from the sequence of notes.
So you're saying that using Meta AI or Google Flow Music is just the 21st century version of John Cage throwing dice?
In many ways, yes. It is the next evolution of that ethos. AI collaboration opens up associative pathways that a single human mind might never stumble into alone.
But the human element remains vital,
Well,
right?
oh, absolutely. The genius of ADHD on tape doesn't lie in the physical execution of striking a piano key. It lies in the profound creative act of defining the exact emotional contours of memory decay.
Just having the vision for it.
Exactly. It's in the audacity to demand that a machine render the hyper-associative logic of an unfiltered mind. JJ isn't less of an artist for using these tools.
No, if anything, it's more complex.
Navigating multiple AI systems and meticulously assembling those fragments in Audacity into a cohesive, devastating emotional arc that is an immense artistic act. JJ remains the architect of intent and the final creative authority.
The prompt itself is basically a work of literature that just happens to render itself as audio.
Which brings us full circle.
It really does. ADHD on tape takes a cognitive state that society labels as a malfunction and frames it as a direct link to cosmic resonance. It strips away the architecture of traditional music to build a biological soundscape that races, freezes, and drags right alongside the human nervous system.
And through an incredible collaboration of human vulnerability and generative AI, it delivers a masterclass in using relentless dissonance to make a single moment of harmony feel devastatingly lonely.
So the ultimate takeaway for you, the listener, is a challenge to how you perceive the noise in your own life.
Right. JJ's work proves that what society often dismisses as a lack of focus might actually contain beautiful, invisible, connective threads.
We just have to learn how to listen to it differently, to look for the face in the static instead of turning the television off.
Precisely.
As we wrap up this deep dive, I want to leave you with something to mull over today. Think back to that internal monologue we talked about at the very beginning.
The looping lyrics, the anxiety.
Yeah, the half-thoughts, the ambient noise of your own life. If our minds are constantly generating their own hyper-associative audio streams, what would your internal tape sound like if you stopped censoring it right now?